There are moments in life when everything you've ever believed, every story, every promise, every piece of trust, suddenly crumbles like sand slipping through your fingers. And right now, sources close to the royal circle claim Prince Harry has just lived through one of those earth-shattering moments. Word has spread from the inside that Harry came face to face with something he was never meant to see. Something that wasn't supposed to exist, not in his world, not in his marriage, and definitely not in the image of the woman he thought he knew. It wasn't just words or rumors, it was proof. Photos, details, images that allegedly tied Meghan not only to a yacht from her mysterious past, but directly to Prince Andrew himself. And when Harry saw them, insiders say he froze, completely. His body went rigid, his face drained of color, his heart caught in his throat. Because the one thing Harry believed with his entire soul was that Meghan had walked into his life untouched, untangled from royal scandals, free of shadows, clean from the mess his family had always tried to escape. But what he saw suggested something else entirely, and that realization broke him in silence. It didn't come with explanations or comforting words. It hit him like a cold slap, one that left a mark you couldn't see but could feel in every breath. And that, as people close to the situation whisper, was just the beginning. Once those images surfaced, more details followed. And that's when the ground truly gave way beneath Harry's feet. Because people connected to Prince Andrew began coming forward, people who had known him for years, saying Andrew didn't remember Meghan as a stranger, not as some random face, but as someone he knew, someone who'd been around his world, someone who, they say, had access. Those who saw Meghan back then now claim her confidence inside royal circles suddenly made sense. They say she didn't act like an outsider when she stepped into the monarchy for the first time. No, she carried herself like someone who already knew the game, the rhythm, the tone, the unspoken rules of power. And if that's true, then that sweet story, the fairy tale of a hardworking actress who just happened to fall in love with a prince, suddenly doesn't sound like fate. It starts to sound like a carefully crafted version of the truth. When that realization hit, those close to Harry say he went quiet, painfully quiet, because if Meghan had known Andrew before him, then everything, their love story, the magic of their first meeting, the purity of how it all began, might not have been pure at all. When the yacht photos first started circulating quietly behind palace walls, there was no shouting, no chaos, no emergency meeting. Instead, there was something much more chilling. Silence. The kind of silence that screams louder than any scandal. People close to Buckingham Palace say the photos were quietly reviewed by individuals who immediately understood what they were looking at. Faces were recognized. Names were connected. Timelines were quietly mapped out. And then, everything disappeared. The whole thing was sealed away, fast, discreetly, permanently. Not to protect Meghan, not even to spare Harry's feelings, but to protect the institution itself, because those photos, if ever made public, could burn the monarchy from within. If the world learned that Meghan had ever moved within Andrew's orbit before she married Harry, it wouldn't just raise eyebrows. It would ignite questions too dangerous to answer. Did the palace know? Did they allow it? Did they hide it? What else had they buried under royal carpets for the sake of their image? Insiders say the implications were catastrophic, so dangerous, in fact, that burying the evidence wasn't a choice. It was survival. And for the first time, Harry allegedly began to understand that silence inside the palace wasn't loyalty. It was protection. Not for Meghan, not for him, but for the monarchy itself. But that wasn't the end, because the yacht photos weren't the only thing raising eyebrows. There were whispers, quiet, terrifying whispers, coming from people connected to the Epstein legal proceedings. And they claimed Meghan's name had been quietly floated as a potential witness. Not because she was Harry's wife, not because she was famous, but because, allegedly, she had once been present in circles that brushed against Andrew's world. Now, here's the part that stunned those who heard it. You can't call a stranger as a witness. For someone's name to even be mentioned means one thing: they were there. They were relevant. They knew something. So just the fact that Meghan's name was even brought up implied a proximity no one ever dared discuss publicly. That revelation terrified everyone inside the palace. Because if Meghan had ever been publicly linked as a potential witness, Harry himself would have been dragged straight into the scandal by marriage, and the palace would have been forced to answer questions it had spent years avoiding. And then, just like that, the conversation vanished. The lists were wiped. The names went silent. The subject disappeared. Andrew's scandal devoured reputations, ended friendships, destroyed alliances, but somehow it skipped over Meghan entirely, as if her name had been scrubbed clean. But the people who were there remember, and now, sources claim, so does Harry. To understand how Meghan even reached those circles, you have to go back, not to Harry, but to Toronto, back when she first arrived to film Suits. People who watched her rise say it was extraordinary, almost unnatural. In a city where most actors climbed slowly, Meghan's ascent was lightning fast. And at the heart of that rise was one man, Marcus Anderson. Insiders describe Marcus as the ultimate connector, a social fixer who could open doors most people didn't even know existed. Through him, Meghan was introduced to Jessica Mulroney, to business elites, to powerful families, to members-only clubs like Soho House. He pulled her from ordinary into extraordinary. Those who saw this transformation say Meghan wasn't discovering these circles, she was being placed in them, groomed for influence, positioned for power. And through those networks, those dinners, parties, and private clubs, Meghan allegedly met people who were connected to Andrew's world long before Harry ever entered hers. Observers from that time claim Meghan learned fast how to talk, how to walk, how to own a room like she was born to it. It was in Toronto, they say, that she began believing she could rise higher, not just to fame, but into royalty itself. Toronto wasn't her beginning, it was her launch pad. And that trajectory, that carefully built path, is what eventually led her straight to Prince Harry. But not before her name had quietly echoed in rooms where Andrew once reigned. Now, when people talk about Meghan meeting Harry, they paint it as a fairy tale, two strangers who found each other by fate. But insiders insist it wasn't fate. It was access. Because long before Harry knew Meghan, Princess Eugenie did. Meghan herself admitted that publicly, but the depth of that connection was never examined. Sources familiar with Eugenie's circle say Meghan wasn't just a casual acquaintance. She was there. In private spaces, at exclusive gatherings, moving among trusted company. And if Eugenie knew Meghan first, then that blind date that supposedly started everything suddenly looks very different. It wasn't coincidence. It was connection. Eugenie, perhaps unknowingly, became the bridge between Meghan and the royal family. A bridge that connected Toronto's nightlife and elite circles to the inner walls of royalty. But if Eugenie opened the door, Sarah Ferguson, Fergie, tried to close it. Sources close to Fergie claim she sensed something the very first time she encountered Meghan. Not scandal, not drama, but ambition. A fierce, calculated ambition she recognized all too well. Fergie knew what it meant when someone like that entered a world built on hierarchy and power. She knew what it could destroy. So, insiders say, she quietly watched Meghan, carefully, cautiously. And she suspected that Meghan's early presence near Andrew wasn't accidental. Fergie, territorial and shrewd, began drawing lines, keeping Meghan from getting too close, limiting interactions, making it clear that certain doors would not open. And that's when everything shifted. Because if Andrew was suddenly unreachable, there was someone else, someone open, innocent, and craving something real. Harry. And just like that, the direction of her climb changed. What followed was the story the public knows. A Hollywood actress meets a lonely prince, the whirlwind romance, the wedding watched around the world. But behind that glowing narrative, insiders whisper about 3 key people who know the parts of the story that were never told. Andrew, Fergie, Eugenie. 3 individuals who, sources claim, were there. Who saw, who knew, who connected pieces the world wasn't meant to connect. They're not outsiders. They were inside the rooms where it all happened. They know the faces, the timelines, the details that could rewrite the story if they ever spoke. And now, they have nothing left to lose, which makes them dangerous. Because people with nothing left to lose often become the ones willing to speak. Every royal scandal in history follows the same rhythm. First a whisper, then denial, then silence, then the drip, and finally, the flood. And according to insiders, Meghan's alleged yacht connections and her early links to Andrew are now well past the whisper stage. We're in the drip, the dangerous part, where bits of truth begin to leak out and the palace grips tighter, knowing it can't stop what's coming forever. They say there are photographs that were never supposed to resurface, names that were never meant to be spoken again, memories buried deep that are now resurfacing. And the people who hold those memories, Andrew, Fergie, Eugenie, are growing older, more distant from the crown, more bitter, and perhaps more willing to talk. Meanwhile, Harry, according to those close to him, is finally facing a truth he's been running from. That maybe he didn't save Meghan from the royal world. Maybe the royal world was trying to save him from hers. And that realization is the quiet fracture beneath it all. The invisible crack running through the picture-perfect story they sold to the world. Because scandals don't vanish. They wait. They bide their time until silence becomes impossible. And when this one finally breaks, when the photos, witnesses, and connections surface, it won't just reshape Meghan's image. It won't just expose Andrew's bitterness or deepen Harry's heartbreak. It could shake the monarchy to its core and reveal that sometimes the most dangerous secrets are the ones hidden right in plain sight. And the story, as those close to the royals whisper, is far from over. Because behind the palace's tall gates, something darker brews. Something no press statement or glossy documentary can smooth over. Harry's quiet heartbreak has turned into suspicion. Insiders claim he has started asking questions that make those around him visibly tense. How much did they all know? When did they know it? Was he ever told the full truth about Meghan's past? Or was he deliberately kept in the dark? Friends say he's torn between 2 instincts: the husband who wants to protect the woman he loves, and the prince who now feels he's been played. They say the walls around him are closing in, that the same institution he fought so hard to escape might have been protecting him all along. And that realization cuts deeper than any tabloid headline ever could. Meanwhile, Meghan continues to move forward, smiling through the storm, acting unbothered, pretending the whispers don't sting. But those who've seen her behind closed doors say her calmness is rehearsed, polished, calculated, the same composure she once used in Toronto when people underestimated her. She knows the palace won't stay silent forever. She knows that when the cracks begin to widen, she'll have to fight back not with love, but with strategy. And that's the tragedy in all of this. What started as a love story that captured the world's imagination has now twisted into something bitter, secretive, and fragile. Because now everyone, Harry, Meghan, Andrew, Fergie, Eugenie, is holding a piece of the same puzzle. But none of them are willing to place theirs on the table first. And until someone does, the truth will keep pulsing underneath the crown's golden silence, waiting, whispering, daring the world to finally look.